Good afternoon, everyone. So we are continuing with still the first Mishnah of chapter 2, and I'm going to put it on the screen for you. Yesterday, we spoke about the idea that we don't know the reward for any particular mitzvah. We shouldn't judge what's a heavy mitzvah, what's a light mitzvah, easy, harder, more important, less important. They're all in terms of how we're doing them are equal, because we do not know what it's going to be. And the next line kind of follows, V'heve mechashev hefseid mitzvah keneged schara. A person should consider the loss or the cost of a mitzvah as, and again, as opposed to its reward, or not as opposed to, but compared to its reward, usachara vera, and the reward that you get for a sin, or the pleasure, it says here, you get from a sin, that's usually the reward, keneged hefseida, compared to the loss. So we know there's famous when you're exercising, there's a short-term pain, long-term gain, or it could be the opposite. You could have short-term gain, long-term pain. That's sort of the idea here. That so we when we're looking at doing something, so we have an immediate reaction to whether or not this is something we want to do or not want to do, just based on how is it going to make us feel in the moment. And what they're telling us here in the Mishnah is, don't just look at this minute, look at the long term. See what's going to be the cost benefit that you think that is costing you now to do a mitzvah. It's possibly costing you time, it's costing you money, it may be costing you effort because it's hard to do, and that's a loss. And actually, the way Rashi is, you could be taking time out from work that you're not going to be able to make money. You're going to lose money that you would have earned, right, because of the time you're putting into a mitzvah. Or also, we know that there is a cost for certain mitzvahs. We want to have a nice esrog. Pesach, Purim is coming up. Pesach is coming up. Pesach is very expensive, right? Eating matzah, etc. So there's a cost. On the other hand, what's the reward? That we understand that the reward for a mitzvah is great, and the reward for a mitzvah in the world to come for sure is something that we can't even imagine how many times value the pleasure and enjoyment and reward that we're going to get compared to reward in this world. That's one way, and that's a little harder maybe for some of us to picture, because it's hard to picture the reward in the world to come. But if we're able to do so, certainly that is something that should be on our mind, that, hey, it's costing me a little bit now, but ultimately, eternally is going to be a reward. And sometimes we could even come up with reward for things that are not in the next world, it's in this world too. Although, again, it's not immediate, right? It's sort of like an investment. You spend money now to invest for the future that is going to be a bigger gain. And on the flip side is the opposite, that when we do a sin, most sins are enjoyable, right? So you're getting a certain pleasure at that moment, and you say, "Wow, isn't this is great? I'm having such a good time." But you have to look at what's going to be the cost in the future. So again, looking at it from the world to come perspective, there's a huge cost in the world to come for doing a sin now. There's also on a again simple perspective, you don't have to go necessarily to the world to come many times, and we don't get about sins against God per se, but I think we can look at it from the dieting example, right? You're going to enjoy that food right now, and it's going to be very pleasurable, but you're going to pay for it when you put on a few pounds tomorrow, the next day, etc. Right? So that could be that same idea plays out in other types of sins as well, and some of them again where the consequences are going to be physical or emotional in this world. Some of them, it's merely the consequence that's going to cost us in the world to come. There's also the question that's asked is that we learned in the first chapter, we learned that we shouldn't do a mitzvah for the sake of a reward. So, why are we discussing the reward here? And answer, a couple of answers that are given to that, but essentially that while it's true that ideally we shouldn't do for the sake of reward, it's still something to pay attention to. Pay attention to that there will be an ultimate reward for a mitzvah is still a motivation for most of us who may not be on the level to be able to yet do it totally for just total love of God. It may be we need a little more incentive than that. So reward speaks to us. And another argument would be that there's still, even if it does cost us something now, there's still going to be a gain from it. And so while we're not focusing on the reward, it is a way of counterbalancing the cost of doing the mitzvah to say, well, if I think about the reward, then that will overcome my hesitation of what it may end up because it's going to cost me something. Another idea is that the Tiferes Yisrael brings down is that in the physical world, so there are things. He used to give example of gold or even wine, but gold is a good example. That gold is very valuable. But actually, I just heard this recently on the radio as someone was talking about it. But gold, everyone thinks gold is precious, but essentially, why is gold But gold doesn't do anything. It's not useful. Right? What can you do with gold? It's because for whatever reason we think it's beautiful or somehow or other we've given it value, and therefore it's very precious. Yet some things, an example he gives are iron, another type of metal, and bread are not as valuable as gold or wine, but they're necessary. Those are things that you need in order to have life. You need bread to eat, and you need iron to make things to be able to live in, etc. So there are two types of things. There are things that are precious because of value, and then there are things that are necessary. So it's the same thing in mitzvahs. There are some that may be more valuable in terms of a greater reward, but there are others that are what we call basic needs for your soul. We don't know which mitzvah may be an absolute basic need for our soul and which one's going to have a greater reward. But therefore, we need both. Don't just go to the thing that we think is a greater reward and give up the one that may be an essential necessity for our spiritual life, and therefore we're giving up on the other one. So basically, he's saying is that we need to pay attention to the rewards that are going to be physical, but also in terms of spiritual, and that we shouldn't be going back to the previous phrase of one mitzvah over another. We don't know, and therefore we should treat them all equally and make sure to do them all. And we will hold it there. Have a great day, everyone.